6, a helping hand with your land.
We're going to go through the setup procedure today for a Woods Kinetic log splitter. If you choose to order one of these from us and have it shipped to you, it's going to show up in a large wooden crate like this. In order to knock these crates apart, we would typically recommend using a large hammer or a pry bar. Some guys will also choose to use a sawzall and rip through all the wood. We would hesitate to say to use a chainsaw. You are going to find metal staples and nails and stuff in order to hold this together. So simply work through this and start by knocking apart the crate. We've broken open the skid and spread all the pieces out here on the floor so we can see what we're dealing with. So you have a couple major assemblies. So we have a tongue and jack up here in the front, the main flywheel segment that's going to sit in the middle of the machine and do your splitting action, the platform here in order to set your logs on, an engine and axle assembly which are bolted together, wheels, 2 side covers to cover up the flywheel, and a hardware kit. So we've broken all the pieces of the hardware kit out here on the table, and you can see Woods has nicely labeled each bag here for you, telling you what the pieces are for. So this would be the hardware kit, dust covers, castle nuts and pins in order to hold the wheels on. This is your hardware for the tongue. These are the pieces in order to hold the axle on. These are the bolts needed in order to hold the log splitting table in place. And these are the bolts and nuts that are used in order to hold the side plastic shields on. Also included is a belt that's going to go between the engine and the kinetic flywheels, a latch here, the operating handle for the split mechanism, and the engine oil to go in the engine. So in order to put the wheels on, we're going to take the tire and slide it over top of the threaded part of the axle. There's a large washer that goes in to retain the bearing, and then a castle nut that you screw on over top of it. Once you go here, you want to tighten the castle nut down a little bit, but don't over tighten it. If you put too much tension on here, it'll stop the wheel from spinning. Once that's in place, then you have a pin that you can slide in through the threaded part of the axle in order to keep the castle nut from coming off. When putting the dust cap on, it's best to use a plastic hammer. If you don't have one of those, put a wood block or something over top of it. If you pound on one of these with a traditional metal hammer, you'll leave all kinds of dents in it. So the most difficult part of this process is installing the flywheel mechanism. This piece is fairly heavy and does take 2 people to lift it. If you read through Woods installation instructions, this is one place that we found a discrepancy between the installation and our application here. So they show in the directions that the wheels are already being installed and leaving most of the crate in place so that you can use the crate to support the flywheel when you lower it down onto the undercarriage. In our case, the wheels typically have not come installed on these. And so in order to work around that, we find something else in order to rest the tongue on. In this case, it's an orange cart down here at the end. So between supporting the back half and having 2 guys lift up the flywheel assembly, simply line it up with the bolt holes below it. Bolts, washers, and nuts are used in order to secure the flywheel mechanism to the rest of the log splitter. In order to attach a jack to the flywheel assembly, use a silver-colored pin in the E-clip at the top and then the hitch pin in the bottom. At this point, you can take the 2 belts that come in the hardware kit and put them over top of the double stack pulley coming off the engine. Each of these belts simply comes up and over top of the flywheel in order to power it. So this tool that's included in the hardware pack is a belt tensioning tool. And what you want to do is come down here to your 2 belts, hook the front belt, and pull on the tensioning tool until you feel it bottom out. And at the point that this mark right here reaches the top of the second belt, you now have this thing adjusted to 60 pounds of tension. So the splitting table slides on for the front and then is bolted onto the lower end of the I-beam using 4 bolts. So in order to install the tongue, you simply take this tongue assembly, slide it through the rectangular hole there at the top of the, underneath the I-beam. When it's slid in the back position, you're going to put this bolt in here in the rear. Important to note that this bolt doesn't actually go through anything. It's simply a retaining bolt here. So you put this nut on, and when you want to attach this thing to your truck, you can push this front in order to pull the tongue forward, and then slide the parking jack up, and the parking jack will come over top of the tongue, and then a pin goes through here in order to hold the tongue in the out position for towing. The splitting knob then can then be screwed into the top of the lever here, and the jam nut tightened down here to keep it from coming loose. So when installing these side shields, the very first thing you need to do is to take this bracket right here and raise it up from its shipping position. Typically this comes with 2 bolts in it and fold it back here underneath the flywheels. So you simply need to take this bracket, stand it up, and then put 2 bolts through to hold it in place. At that point now we can take our side shields, slide them over top of the flywheels, and simply take the bolts rather, and run them down in through the nuts. So that's the setup of a Woods KLS kinetic log splitter. Here in the shop today, this took us a little bit over an hour to do with an experienced mechanic. If you haven't had the tools on hand and you're not used to doing these kinds of things, figure about 2 hours or so to set one up yourself. The most demanding part of this setup certainly is lifting the flywheel and I-beam assembly up onto the rest of the machine. That is something it does take 2 people in order to do, and you're lifting probably a little bit over 200 pounds or so. So if we could sell one of these to you have any questions about one, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick's.com.